Welcome, everybody. Hello, this is Spirit Matters. I am Dayal Gurunga here with my friend and co host Kishore Chandra. We normally have Achyuta Gopi with us, but she's got the allergies this morning. So she's staying in, although that may just be an excuse. She could be on a roller coaster right now, and we don't know. We're not sure, but we love you, Achyuta, and we miss you. We hope you feel better, or we hope the theme park is lots of fun. This is your daily Bhakti Center podcast where we try to keep it real. We try to discuss spiritual subject matters as they pertain to our daily lives through some authenticity, some vulnerability, as well as some just kind of spiritual churning. Um, and it's kind of like a little daily lifeline. So I'm glad you're here with us. How are you, Kishore?
I'm doing well. I'm feeling very inspired because this weekend you and I, Dayal, we finished our leading our yoga teacher training at the Bhakti Center. It was our
Woohoo!
online, yes, it was our online yoga teacher training. And it just really impacted me yesterday. And what's on my mind this morning is really the importance of community and the importance of like-minded community and being around people who lift you up instead of bring you down. And I remember like one person saying this, like she said something to the group. She was like, all of you know me better than like most of my friends do. And I haven't even met you in person because it was an online yoga teacher training. And I think about this podcast and I think about all of us, like we're all over the world. We're in California and Florida and the Philippines, all over. And it's like we're coming together in such a sweet way and learning so much about each other. And so, yeah, I kind of wanted to touch on that, on the importance of spiritual community and how it really, really uplifts us. And I want to hear your take on it, DG.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, well, there's a couple things that online YTT was great. It was 8 weekends, started back in September, and we just finished it. And there was two things that came to mind. First, that came to mind a little bit separate than what you just mentioned. I'll just share real quick, and then I'll come back to the point you mentioned. Was also something we discussed as people were checking out. Like everyone taught their classes, then we had like a little closing circle, people sharing their reflections, and then we were sharing something about each other. And I was just thinking a lot about leadership um, and not, we think of leadership as like the CEO of a company or the starter of a nonprofit or, the leader of a community initiative or something. But what I was observing in that group is that because not everybody takes a yoga teacher training because they want to teach yoga. Some people never actually, lead a class themselves. They just want self transformation. They want to deepen their own practice. Some of them, if you're like me, like you don't even have a steady asana practice when you begin your yoga teacher training, but that's your way to dive in. And um, so it wasn't that like, okay, now you guys are teachers and leaders because you're going to stand in front of a class, but you've grown and observed so much, and we can share yoga practice without ever putting anybody on a mat ever again. But that the way we go out and show up in the world is leadership. And I think everyone watching this podcast, oh my God, Aid's coming in. Aid's one of our students from the YTT. Talking
Yes.
about her. That we'll highlight her in a second. Um, but the idea that for everyone watching this podcast and everyone that was in our training and for us is sort of this, remembrance. I was talking about on Saturday, we had a soul talks at the Bhakti Center. It's our weekly in-person kind of like we talk about the soul and it's a spiritual discussion, open, public, ongoing discussion group. And we talk about like society often, or we are products of society, but we're also makers of society. We are the society, we are the they, so much of like they and society and people, etc. But like we also are the makers of society, we are the game changers, and we do that by just bringing our spiritual morals and values and principles into every aspect of our life. And so I was encouraging the students and I was appreciating that very much about how each of us have that ability to be change makers in our own life, in any large or small and seemingly insignificant ways. And so for us to take our own lives very seriously and value the importance of who we are and what we bring into the world. Krishna mentions in the third chapter of the Gita the importance of setting examples, and that what people there's always somebody looking to you. There's always somebody observing you. And that's important for us to kind of a healthy sort of pressure that we keep in our minds to always want to be stepping up our game, always wanting to be like, how am I? I'm not just an observer. I'm not just a participant. I am a participant, and I am um, somebody that's making a difference and influence. So that was something that I was thinking about. And then how it relates to community is that we can only do that when we have people around us kind of doing the same, keeping us in check and like having some sense of who we want, being around people that are the types of people we want to be and that encourage us to be the kind of person we want to be.
Mm.
And that sometimes when we think about, you ask the question, who really knows you? And you don't really know me. And it's like, do I even really know myself? What does it mean? Like, what part of me am I allowing myself to be known? And I think that's where spirituality cuts to that lower and lower, not lower in the neck, but like deeper and deeper sense of identity. And it's like, okay, I'm not, you know me as, and we've talked about this a little bit before, the girl from Jamaica Queens or this person or that person, and it's like, I am, me as a, you know, heterosexual white man. You know me as a homosexual Latin gay man. You know me as a woman. You know me as a black person. You know me as a executive. You know me as a funny guy who does dad jokes. You know me as like whatever slice of my persona you know me as. It's like when we come to spiritual circles, we really take it a lot deeper because once we get attached to a certain persona of somebody, it's almost like when that thing changed, then we have this language like, oh, I fell out of love with you. I don't even know you anymore. But it's like, how can I get, when we come into these deep spiritual circles, we recognize and honor all those external um, facets of who we are because it's how we move. It's the vehicles and operating system we have in this world. But also, it's like, I know that you're something so, so much more deeper. I know that you are a spirit soul who's just walking through the muck of material life and you're showing up. And that's what I love so much about like this podcast and seeing our live virtual audience and when people send me messages that they're listening or when we're in the YTT and some of the students we even recognize like we almost didn't make it, like they moved continents or they had a thing come up in their life or they had like they were struggling with stress or whatever it might be, and it was like could have, but it's like they're all showing up. And I want all of you, our live studio audience, you're listening to this podcast right now because you're showing up in life. You are making a declaration like, I want to grow. You're not listening to Spirit Matters podcast because, I don't know, because it's just something to waste the time doing. Like you're tuning in because, oh, let me see about something that will elevate my consciousness, raise the bar.
Mm.
And so that's what we're here for. And I want to appreciate that in each and every one of you. And thank you for doing that for me, Kishore. You've always done that for me. It's why I love teaching with you. It's why I love speaking with you. It's why I love, going on retreats for you. If you want to go on a retreat with Kishore and I, we're going to Mexico, April 2nd through 9th. Kirtan training. Pasha's like, man, I wish I can come. And so please, please do come. And thank you for listening to my rant. Love you guys all so much. I'll be here tomorrow. Take care. See you. Till next time. Bye bye, everybody.
I love hearing Doyal's rants. They're my favorite. Um, there was a lot of points. I'm gonna pick one. I really like this concept that well, there was two concepts. One was this lifting each other up and the role of the leader of like where we're lifting each other up and other people are observing us. Yes, that was the point. Like other people are observing us in this healthy pressure. And like I'm someone who, to be very honest, sometimes doesn't like that kind of pressure. And I think about it the wrong way, actually. And I've been going through this these past few weeks about this specific notion because I think that there's this fallacy that we like to tell ourselves that, we like crave community and we want community and we're looking for community. But it's like we think that what we do isn't affecting other people sometimes. And it's like everything we do affects other people. Like, and it's crazy. It's kind of intense to think about it. It's like, and if, like how I show up in my community is affecting those around me, and I'm just speaking for myself. Like sometimes I don't think about that. Like I'll just be very honest. I'll just show up how I want to show up, or I'll just show up and I'm tired, or I'll just show up and I'm like stressed because I have all this stuff to do or whatever. And I'm just like, oh yeah, that's right. There's like a community around me and there's people and there's all of this. And okay, I have, and it's not, I think we've been talking about this a lot because it's not that like you're you're faking it or something like that. It's more of honoring every other person's journey, and being able to like say, yes, I'm going through it, or yes, I'm stressed, without like, I don't know, without getting so bogged down by it. I'm somebody that I can get bogged down by a feeling or emotion. Like if I have a feeling or an emotion that's not great, I have to like resolve it. I'm very OCD sometimes. I have to like resolve it to the last detail for me to be able to move on with life. I'm like, I have to understand every single thing. I'm just like, you know what? I could just put the pause button and be like, okay, I'm gonna pause this for a second. I'm gonna come back to this. And now I have to like be here for my community. And now I have to show up to this teacher training. And now I have to show up for this podcast. And I actually think that that's kind of healthy. I think the idea that like we have to have everything figured out all the time is really not so healthy, because we
Mm.
are complex beings, and we are gonna it's gonna take time to figure out what we're going through. It's amazing going back to the yoga teacher training, like seeing where it began eight weeks ago and like where we are now. It's like everyone went through such a beautiful transformation. And I think the idea is that the transformation doesn't stop. It's not like I finished my yoga teacher training and now it's like I'm transformed, I'm bhakti,
Mm.
it's like that transformation is continuous. It's always happening. Change is always happening. And how do I honor the fact that like this is life, right? It's like ups and downs and changes and twists and turns, and I'm moving countries, I'm moving apartments, this reversal, this positive thing, like it's just up and down, right? This is the nature of life. So how do I honor that and try my best to be steady and not get so overwhelmed, so that I can also show up in community? Because it's actually something that is really important to be able to do that. We need it actually. And I think during the pandemic, we 100% realized that, right? It's like we need people, we need community, we need to be around other people. And I'll say one last thing before I stop. I think sometimes it's easier to think like, I don't need anybody, I can just do me, I'm just gonna be in my apartment and do me. And I think it doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. I'm somebody who I was talking with Doyal the other day about this. I was like, I need to go out into the world and do things and be with people.
I need to
um
dress up and be seen.
I need to dress up and be seen. I literally said that because I like getting dressy. And
And he has good style,
thank you, thank you.
but he's
And
taken.
yes, I am. But just from a spiritual perspective, I really love this point that like it's not just that we are being observed by others and therefore we have to like this, like it's a reciprocal relationship actually. And I think when we realize that, it's really grounding and really beautiful, that like, oh, I'm gonna help lift up others by showing up and by being here and etc. And they're also actually doing the same thing, and that's really really beautiful and amazing. Just how like Doyal and I are showing up here to the podcast, the fact that you all are showing up, it helps me immensely. I'm like, okay,
Mm.
it's 8 in the morning, Pasha and Lane are going to be there, okay, podcast time, like I gotta
Excellent.
get there. And so I think when we realize that it's this beautiful reciprocal relationship, it just gets really beautiful and deep.
And I think what I was hearing from you, and I was looking up a little in the Gita, is it's in the showing up that we transform. It's in the showing up that we transform, and it because it's we don't really know what's going to happen necessarily, and I think that the paralysis we experience in some life is because we don't know what's going to happen, and we need to have everything figured out ahead of time, which is itself a complete illusion. Because even if we think we know exactly what the plan is going to be and exactly how it's going to, pan out, we really don't. And then we feel frustration, we feel anxiety that things aren't going the way that I planned them to. And so, we can plan as best we can so we have some sort of direction to move forward, but it's in the showing up where we actually it's an act of surrender actually. I don't feel completely prepared. And we saw this yesterday with our YTT students. Welcome, Aid, by the way. We know you're here and so glad. Aid is in our live studio audience. She was one of our YTT students and she did great. Um, and so, it's almost like I don't feel prepared to teach my class. I don't feel prepared to say something. I don't feel prepared for life, but I show up anyways because I know it's not about my performance that is how I'm going to be measured and judged, or what I'm trying to do. There is no such thing as material perfection, but I know that it's going to teach me something about myself. I'm going to grow. I'm showing up for other people, just showing up as a service for others, because there's other people that benefit from your presence and get inspired and look to the left and look to the right and like, oh, I'm not alone in this. And so, I was looking up some of these verses from the third chapter. It's so interesting. So much of this is there in the third chapter of the Gita, where Krishna starts the third chapter and he mentions that, first of all, it's not possible for you to be inactive ever. And so, even when we think that we're hiding or shying away from the world, we're still active. We're still moving in a direction. That itself is a choice. Not choosing to engage in something is still making a choice, and we're engaging in something. We're engaging in hiding, and our consciousness, our attention is constantly being molded towards something. Um, and so it's not that we can ever like completely disengage. We just engage in a different way, by not choosing or hiding or whatever it may be. So you're constantly active.
Mm.
And he's talking about this idea of like surrender or being detached, not from action, not from engaging, but be detached from how things pan out, from the results of what may or may not happen. And he mentions this beautiful verse. He says, this is the 19th verse of the third chapter. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, meaning the results or what comes of it or what you may or may not gain or lose, one should act as a matter of duty or responsibility, or just this sense of like, I'm going to show up anyways. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. And I love that last phrase, for by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. Why? Because it's in showing up that we transform. And so if I let go, what prevents me? What prevents me from showing up in my life? It's the fear of getting it wrong. It's the fear of failure. It's the fear of rejection. It's the fear of exposing myself. It's the fear of letting me or other people down. It's the uncertainty if things are going to go quote unquote right. And therefore, I get stuck in this paralysis and I don't move forward. And I think it's better to stay here where, yeah, at least it feels somewhat safe and familiar than to venture out there and screw everything up. But what he's saying, that when you move forward, when you take that step, when you show up without attachment, don't think, well, I took the step forward and it all fell apart. See, that was a bad idea. I never should have done that. And it's like, no, there was never a promise that when you take your step forward, that he or she's going to say yes, that you're going to get the job of your dreams, that you're going to manifest millions of dollars. Like, there's no guarantee that any of that's going to happen. But what you will attain is something deep within yourself. You'll develop a further, deeper relationship with your higher power. You'll learn more about yourself and who you are and who you're not. And growth takes place on a deep internal level. And it's just kind of rewiring our definition of success spiritually. And so like I'm really appreciating, and that's why so much of the Gita is about action. It's about, again, I'm using this phrase of continuing to show up with detachment and introspection.
Mm. There's this, I think I've brought this up before, but I'll bring it up again because I think it's so wonderful. In a translation of the Gita that it's called, it's the Bhagavad-Gita, but by Rancher Prime. It's like this little blue book and it's really sweet. And he has like titles for each section. And there's this section in the Gita where Arjuna is getting a little bit worried, like, what if I fail? What if I try and it doesn't work out? This path of yoga that you've laid out to me, it seems very intense. Like, what if I start along the path and fall off of it later? And Krishna says to him that, like, there's everything you've done in this world, it's going to come with you to the next. But I really like that the little title that Rancher Prime uses for this section of verses is called "There is no spiritual failure." And that
Mm,
always really stuck with me because, especially when you were speaking, Dayal, just now about redefining our relationship with success and failure, I feel like that's really it, actually, because I think so many people are afraid of failing, of messing up, of what if I do the wrong thing, of was this the right decision, is it going to go as planned? And I don't, because I don't think it's extremes. I don't think it's like okay, I surrender everything and I'm just gonna like say yes to everything and just let it go however it's gonna go. It's like we have to use our intelligence as well to make decisions. But I think it really is this mood that you were describing from the Gita of a sense of detachment from the fruits of our actions. Like it's, I tried my best, I showed up, and it's going to go how it goes in a sense, you know? And even if I make a mistake, because like you're saying, Krishna doesn't say that you might not make a mistake. Oh, you know, work with detachment and it's all going to go perfectly. It's like, that's not the deal, actually. And in those moments when mistakes are made or when there's supposed setbacks or failures, I think many of us already know this, but it's always good to hear it again that in those moments we learn so much and we grow so much and we become more resilient and we become more full of faith actually in those moments. Like if you really think about faith, faith doesn't come when I'm just like everything is going great. I'm walking in the park and I look so great. Oh, I just feel so full of faith, you know, like that's not when faith comes. Faith comes when I'm like going through it and stuff isn't going my way and there's been reversals in my life and I'm still knowing in my heart that God is there with me, actually, that Krishna is there with me. That's really when faith is built in those dark, you know, dark nights of the soul, as we call them.
Mm.
So I think it's like, yeah, not being afraid of that, you know.
Yeah, Dana wrote in the chat, how'd you know I needed to hear this today? Wow, heart emoji. It's because I stalk you on Instagram, Dana. I follow you, I see what you're going through, and I use that as fuel to learn what I want to discuss. And no, I'm just joking. Um, it's because I need to hear it too. And we all need to hear it. And what we find is that what's most personal is what's most universal. Um, and that, you know, when we really think about what, and I think that's one of the greatest tricks of material life is that we think we're the only one going through it.
Mm.
But that actually, when we really get to know ourselves and know each other, it's that we are usually going through a lot of the same things. And what was coming to mind when, as you were sharing, Kishore, that I really appreciated was that, you know, when we show up with detachment, we learn a lot about who we are and who we aren't, and we are sometimes it's the way we let go of certain conceptions we thought about ourselves. I thought I was this, and then I failed and I learned that I'm not, which is actually a good thing because it allows me to crack a little bit of my false ego and let go of the personas that I became so attached to. And it actually enhances, you were talking about community in the very beginning, it actually enhances close, intimate friendships and relationships because now I'm not showing up to you with this shell that I've been trying to prop up for so long. That's cracked. And I'm approaching it with a genuineness and a realness of like, this is just who I am and who I go through. I'm no longer trying to prop something up. And then we experience real connection on a level of the soul because I've gone through the ringer a little bit and I'm no longer trying to pretend that I'm something that I'm not. And I've learned to kind of surrender a little bit, and then it's very endearing. And I think that's what we experienced a little bit, and that's why it's so important for us to take extended journeys with each other. Like this online YTT was an 8 weekend journey over the course of 5 or 6 months that we took with each other. 4 months. When we go on pilgrimage to India, or when we're going to Mexico in April, it's not just nice spiritual vacations. It's because it takes a minute to actually get into a space with people where you've gone beyond the initial chit chat
Mhm.
of whatever's going on the surface, and then it's like, oh, you can actually start to have real conversations, and you actually start to learn a little bit more. Like the armor comes down, and we actually start to relate. Like as Dana was saying, like, how'd you know you needed to hear about this? Well, because I need to hear about it. And we start to actually get into that space where we see our common ground. And if there's anything that the Gita teaches us, it's that we bond through our struggles and failures more than our victories. And so Arjuna is faced with this tremendous feeling of doubt, insecurity, anxiety, fear of failure. Like he's in like his lowest moment. And that's the place where we resonate, you know? And when we can get to a space where we safely can share some of those struggles with other people, we were like, oh my God, like, I think one of Brene Brown's first books that I think she retitled it to Gifts of Imperfection. I thought it was just me.
Mm,
And that was one of her first books. And so when we realize that it's not just me, we gain this great sense of ease. And it's not so much the struggle or the failure that worries me in life. It's the fear of rejection and isolation that will result from that failure. But when we realize that we can fail and still be accepted, um, that dissipates in a huge way. So
mm,
thank you, Kishore, for never failing and being perfect. I look up to you for that. I very much appreciate it. Kimberly, what you got some takeaways for us? Then I'd love to hear a closing word from Kishore. What are some phrases, or if anybody has any takeaways, a phrase that they heard that they appreciate or that they want to stick with them and they want to put it in the chat. It can be a concept or even just like a word or a phrase that you want to take away with you. And Kimberly's going to read it all out.
We are the products and makers of society.
mm,
Each of us has the ability to be change makers in our lives. Within a like minded community, we build beautiful reciprocal relationships based on safety and acceptance, and learn to show up with detachment and introspection. There's no spiritual failure. It's in the
Mm,
showing up that we transform.
beautiful. And Lile Shetty wrote, love the idea that showing up is a way to honor other people's journey. I think this mood helps me understand how showing up is not ignoring and bypassing our difficulties, but acknowledging it and yet choosing to show up from a deeper place. Thank you, Lile Shetty, and thank you all those who were tuning in and chatting on our board. Beautiful messages from everybody. Do we got a closing word or something you wanna close out with, Kishore?
Yeah, the word that's coming to my mind is just daily, two words, daily reminders,
Mm,
because these things seem simple and we learn about them a lot and we hear about them a lot. I love how Aid is saying, yes, everything is always happening for me, not to me. So it's like, it's kind of like we've heard this a lot, but I'm just really realizing how Sangha and this that we've created in this podcast and just community in general, it's a place where we can come together to hear these reminders because we actually need them. We actually need to hear this again and again and again and again and again. And so I'm grateful that we have this space.
Samuel Douglas. Samuel Douglas. You guys know the famous Samuel Douglas?
Hmm.
He's some English author or something. I don't know. I don't really know him, but he's quoted as saying, "People need to be reminded more than they need to be instructed." See, Passion Lane were laughing at me. They're like, "Where is he going with this, Dad? Who are you referencing?" He's not even on Samuel Douglas. He's on TikTok. Check him out. Love you guys so much. Thank you so much for being here. Really, really, really glad for our live audience. If you want to join our live audience, check out our Rise platform. You can find it at bhakticenter.org, or you can always email us at info@bhakticenter.org. We're happy to be in touch with you anytime. If you'd like to come with Kishore and I to Mexico for an immersive 8-day kirtan training, it's happening in a few weeks. We got a few spots left. Please come. Don't miss it. Check out bhakticenter.org or email us. All the info is there. We love you guys tons. Please have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, wherever you're at. And we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Same time, same place. Bye bye. Take care.